From a psychological standpoint, Emily is the textbook case of prolonged emotional deprivation, chronic fear, learned helplessness, self-erasure, and an almost compulsive instinct to protect the very life that is crushing her. Then Luca Salvatore enters the equation, and what makes him fascinating is not his violence, but his precision. He identifies her fractures immediately, he reads her hunger, her panic, her pregnancy, her lies, not because he is magical, but because predators and protectors are often fluent in human damage. That is what gives this story its addictive tension. It is not merely about whether Emily will be rescued, it is about whether rescue from a dangerous man is still rescue. And what happens when the person who understands your trauma best is also the one capable of becoming your obsession.
It began with the betrayal of her own hand, a sudden failure of nerve that sent a flute of costly champagne on its final downward spiral. In the space between heartbeats, the crystal caught the light, a last glittering pirouette before it met the marble floor and ceased to exist. The sound was a single sharp crack, severing the ballroom's gentle murmur. In that instant, 200 pairs of eyes found her, the solitary epicenter of the sudden, jarring silence. A server, lost inside a uniform not quite her own, stood frozen in a tableau of profound failure and burning shame. "My apologies," she murmured to the floor, her fingers meeting razored glass as she knelt, her own blood blooming amid the golden spill. The cloying scent of wasted luxury soured in her stomach. A supervisor's voice cut cleanly through the hush. "Leave it." Marcus, the manager, offered only a curt jerk of his head toward the kitchens. A silent, sharp dismissal. She rose, cradling her wounded hand, the uniform now feeling less like clothing and more like a cage. She had pleaded for a larger size only last week, a request flatly denied. She'd been wrestling with this one for 6 long months. The secret life growing within her, a source of quiet anxiety, was making her own body a truth she could no longer conceal. Now 3 months into her term, she had been attributing the relentless sickness to a case of food poisoning. Deception had become her most practiced art. The careful draping of a shirt, the ramrod straightness of her posture, a daily performance for her husband. David's continued ignorance was the one fragile thread holding her world together. The kitchen's sterile glare felt like an assault after the ballroom's amber glow. She watched her blood swirl into the drain, her own exhausted face staring back from the polished steel. Dark hollows had taken root beneath her eyes, making the blonde of her hair seem brittle and lifeless. At 26, she wore the deep fatigue of a woman of 40. "You are contaminating my floor," Chef Antoine remarked, his focus never leaving the pan before him. "First aid or the exit, the choice is yours." His casual cruelty was the signature spice in all his affairs. For 2 years, she had been grinding away in this place, ever since David's salary from the pharmaceutical company proved no match for his secret appetites for the gamble. Pressing a rough towel to the gash, another tide of nausea crested within her. She breathed in the kitchen's air, truffle oil, searing meat, and something else. It was the ghost of cigarette smoke, drifting from a side door. The entire building felt hostile, an environment utterly toxic to the fragile new life she carried. But home was no sanctuary. It was a 1-bedroom apartment that reeked of mildew and the quiet, crushing weight of defeat. Home was the shape of David, lost to the world on their sofa, a barricade of empty bottles his only defense. It was a drawer overflowing with letters written in angry crimson ink that she was forced to conceal. She had married him at 22, possessed by the youthful fantasy that love was a cure for all wounds. 4 years on, she understood love was merely the starting point. She knew now that love could not survive in a vacuum of neglect, that it could be slowly starved into nothingness. His gaze now passed straight through her, a daily confirmation that she had become essentially a ghost in their life. And the child was not his. a truth that felt like a shard of glass in her soul, conceived on a night of profound loneliness when she desperately needed to be seen. The setting had been a hotel bar, the liquor a balm after David's familiar text. "Working late, babe, don't wait up." For the 100th time, the simple attention of a stranger had made her feel solid again. She'd already forgotten his name, but not the fleeting, incandescent feeling of being alive just moments before her world came crashing down again. "Emily," the supervisor's voice sliced back into her reality. "The VIP section requires another server. Now." Bearing a fresh tray, she walked back into the gilded cage. The Belvedere hosted these charity spectacles twice a month, the wealthy paying $1,000 a plate to purchase status, while the staff fought for the tips that might just cover the rent. Velvet ropes cordoned off the chosen few, a soft barrier between two entirely different worlds. She kept her gaze fixed on the floor, praying for the invisibility that would prevent another disaster. And that is when she caught it, a scent unlike any other. Sandalwood, woven with something darker, something utterly magnetic. The fragrance was masculine and spoke of immense wealth, perhaps leather or cedar, and it cut through the room's cloud of cloying perfumes, compelling her to lift her head. He was at the central table, a king surrounded by his court of suits. Yet he was the only one she truly saw. His face was a study in Renaissance shadow and light, his dark hair swept back from his brow. The man possessed cheekbones that could cut shadows, a jawline of uncompromising granite, and the barest hint of a smirk. He couldn't have been much older than 30, yet he radiated an authority that seemed to compress the very air around him. His charcoal suit was tailored to a body that looked as if it understood violence. But it was his eyes that seized her, a tempest of gray fixed solely upon her. The very air seemed to vanish from her lungs as the tray began to quiver, the glasses chattering softly. His stare traced a line of fire across her skin, from her face to her bandaged hand and back again. A voice from his table fractured the silence, setting her free from the trance. With a shuddering breath, she moved forward, her hands unsteady as she placed the glasses down. Careful, his voice was a low thrum of sound as his hand darted out, bracing the tray an instant before it could fall. The brief contact sent a current of pure shock up her arm. She recoiled as if burned. "My apologies, sir. Your hand is bleeding." It was a statement, not a question. Closer now, she saw silver cufflinks, a timepiece of quiet expense, and a faint, white scar that bisected his left eyebrow. This man was an enigma of wealth and menace. "It is nothing," she managed. "Just a small cut from the glass you dropped." Another statement confirming he had seen the entire humiliating spectacle. "Sit." "I cannot. I am working." "Sit." The word was spoken softly, yet it carried the weight of an edict. His men parted, and one with an earpiece produced a chair from nowhere. Her body obeyed before her mind could mount a defense. With the tray still resting in her lap, he gently unwrapped the blood-soaked towel. His movements were clinical, his focus absolute as he examined the cuts. "Dante," he said without looking up. "The medical kit." The larger man moved with silent speed. The stranger's thumb then came to rest on the frantic pulse in her wrist. She felt as if he could read the frantic Morse code of her hammering heart, the panicked signals it was broadcasting. The fear was not of him precisely, but of this unnerving, absolute focus. "You are pale," he observed. "When did you last eat?" "I am fine." "That is the second lie you have offered me in as many minutes." He lifted his gaze, a deliberate maneuver meant to trap her within it. I dislike dishonesty, Piccolola. The Italian endearment was a calculated, intimate strike. Her instinct to flee warred with a paralyzing stillness. She recognized this kind of predator, one who controlled the world simply by existing within it. And still she did not move. Dante had returned with a case of black leather. The man, whose name remained a mystery, opened it, revealing equipment of professional grade. He cleaned her wounds, his touch surprisingly gentle as he applied a fresh dressing. "Your name?" he asked. "Emily." The word simply fell from her lips. "Emily," he repeated, as if testing the weight of it on his tongue. "I am Mr. Salvatore." At that moment, Marcus appeared, his face a mask of burgeoning panic. "My deepest apologies for this. The employee will be disciplined." "She will not," Salvatore stated, his gray eyes never leaving Emily. "In fact, I am reassigning her. Emily will be attending to my table exclusively for the remainder of the evening." "Of course, whatever you wish." "Alone." That single word silenced Marcus for good. "Everyone else may withdraw." It was a command, not a request. Marcus practically fled. The other staff dissolved into the background. Even Salvatore's men retreated, creating a perimeter of false privacy. They were now utterly alone in a room that held hundreds of people. "You do not need to," she began. "Answer me this, Emily." He leaned back, his appraising stare leaving her feeling completely exposed. "Are you afraid of me?" Every rational cell in her body screamed yes. He registered as a walking threat, but his question demanded the truth. "No," she whispered. His smile was slow, and it held the certainty of a man who knew everything. "You ought to be." Before she could absorb the chill of his words, her stomach seized in a violent lurch. She clamped a hand over her mouth, fighting a rising wave of sickness. "Not here, not now. Please," her mind begged. "Emily," his tone sharpened. "Is there a problem?" "No, I just—" A sudden movement sent her world tilting on its axis. The room warped. The tray of glasses crashed to the floor. Before she could follow, strong arms encircled her, pulling her securely against a solid chest. "Dante, the car!" "Sir, it is fine." But her vision was already collapsing into a narrow tunnel of black. She could not recall her last proper meal. The relentless sickness had turned the act of eating into an ordeal. Her final sensation before consciousness fled was of being lifted by a man of impossible strength. His sandalwood scent a strange paradox of rescue and pure menace. She awoke to the scent of cured leather and the deep, resonant hum of a powerful engine. The world was a blur of chrome reflections and plush interiors, and her mind struggled to bridge the chasm between the ballroom floor and this moving, luxurious prison. "Gently," a voice of smoke and authority commanded. "Remain still." Instinct urged her to defy the order, some primal part of her knowing that to lie down was a greater risk than to be dizzy. She was stretched across a long seat, her head resting on fabric that carried his unmistakable sandalwood scent. As the world sharpened, she saw her abductor, Salvatore, seated across from her. He was impossibly calm, his stormy eyes tracking her every slight movement. His jacket was gone, revealing powerful forearms covered in a dark tapestry of ink, dispelling any notion that he was merely a man of business. The ink covered his skin. "Where are you taking me?" she asked, her voice a rough scratch in her throat. He held out a crystal tumbler of water. "Drink." Logic screamed at her to refuse, but a deeper, more primitive instinct to obey took precedence. She took it with her bandaged hand and sipped. The water was a cool balm, and her vision cleared almost instantly. "Better," he stated, as if observing a scientific fact. You fainted, malnourished, dehydrated. When did you last eat? That is none of your business. It became my business when you collapsed into my arms, Piccolola. He leaned forward, an invasion of her space. Answer me. The command in his tone shattered her meager defenses. Yesterday, perhaps. A muscle feathered in his jaw. You, perhaps. I work 2 jobs, I forget. People do not simply forget to eat. His gaze dropped to her stomach for a fraction of a second, a silent, damning inquiry. Not without a reason. A wave of pure glacial dread washed over her. He couldn't possibly know the truth, the secret that lived inside her like a relentless, cold fear. Yet his gaze was a scalpel, sharp enough to peel back the layers and expose the life she carried within. I should leave, she managed, her voice trembling as she set down her glass, desperate for a sliver of command. My husband is expecting me. The air inside the car instantly frosted over. Husband, he uttered the word as if it were venom on his tongue. Strange, there's no ring. Her hand instinctively recoiled, hiding the naked finger that screamed her poverty. It had been sold 2 months prior to cover the rent. I remove it when I'm working. Stop. His single word struck the air like a lash. I told you not to lie to me. A dense, weighted quiet filled the space between them. Beyond the darkened windows, unfamiliar, opulent avenues drifted past. A knot of pure dread began to tighten in her stomach. Where are you taking me? To a place where you can finally eat properly. His thumbs moved with practiced speed across his phone. My physician has been summoned. He's coming to examine you. No. The denial tore from her throat far too sharp. A doctor isn't necessary. Please, just return me. His gaze sharpened. Her vehement rejection of care was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You fainted. I'm all right, she insisted, her voice fraying with rising fear. A physician would uncover it all, posing questions she had no answers for. Please, I just want to leave. And hurry back? To the man who allows you to go hungry? His tone was a chilling blend of smooth silk and poison. The one who sees you juggle 2 jobs yet fails to see his own wedding band is gone? You know nothing about me. I know you are deceiving yourself. He inclined his head, observing her like a fascinating specimen. I know you protect a man who offers you nothing in return, and this burden you carry, Piccolola, is consuming you from the inside. The burn of tears pricked at her eyes, but she fought them back. To weep now would be to admit just how shattered she was. Why does it matter to you? She whispered, her voice fracturing. We don't even know each other. No, he conceded, but that is about to change. The conviction in his voice sent a tremor through her that had nothing to do with hunger. The vehicle descended a ramp into a subterranean parking structure fortified with staggering security. Cameras followed their every move, past checkpoints every 10 feet. This was the domain of a man with immense influence. This isn't a restaurant, she noted, the statement hanging uselessly in the air. Clever? The car halted. Dante opened her door with practiced efficiency. Salvatore emerged, extending a hand to her. Welcome to my residence. Don't consider refusing. This is not a request. A primal urge to flee screamed inside her, yet her gaze was fixed on his hand, on the faded scars and the silver band he wore. An inexplicable magnetic force, more potent than her terror, compelled her to accept it. His grasp was solid, unexpectedly warm. They ascended in a silent lift, hemmed in by Dante and 2 other men whose weapons were poorly concealed, a silent, deadly enclosure. What is it that you do? She inquired softly. The faintest smirk touched his mouth. I collect things. That isn't a profession. It is the only explanation you will receive tonight. The doors parted, revealing a penthouse where the city glittered beneath them through vast panes of glass, a testament to absolute power. The expansive space was a symphony of marble, dark timber, and rich leather. Invaluable works of art adorned the walls. An archway revealed a kitchen fit for a 5-star establishment. Sit, he motioned toward a sofa. Do not move. He strode to the kitchen, his tone low and authoritative. A torrent of swift Italian burst from the kitchen. She understood only fragments. Cibo, food, veloce, quickly. One part of her mind screamed to run, yet exhaustion and the deep comfort of the sofa held her captive. Salvatore returned carrying a tray. The offering was simple: warm bread, cheese, fruit, and a broth gentle enough for an empty stomach. He placed it on the coffee table before her. Eat. I told you I wasn't hungry. I am aware of what you said, he countered, lowering himself into a chair opposite her, a figure of coiled tension. You will eat, or I will put the spoon to your lips myself. His ultimatum sent a strange heat through her veins. She complied, raising the spoon. It was a plain chicken broth. The first taste sent a jolt through her starved system. She ate under his watch, his stare feeling less invasive and more protective. Better? He inquired when the bowl was half empty. Yes. She set down her spoon. Save your gratitude. He moved to the immense windows, a dark silhouette against the urban glow. Tell me of this husband, Emily. There is nothing to say. Is he the reason you're a walking shadow? He pivoted, the light catching planes of his face. Does he drive you to exhaustion? My marriage does not concern you. Perhaps, he conceded, narrowing the distance between them with measured, unhurried steps. But you do. Why? The question escaped her, raw and unguarded. Why is a clumsy waitress the focus of this? Why are you involved? He halted, a mere breath away. She had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. The honest truth, Piccolola. I don't know. I saw you, a ghost moving through life, and some fractured piece of my own soul recognized its counterpart in you. He raised a hand, his fingertips tracing the line of her cheek. The broken are always drawn to the broken. A sensible person would have recoiled. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, starved for a single gesture of compassion. I need to leave, she whispered. To what? To continue spinning fictions for a worthless man to maintain this facade? His thumb grazed her lower lip, and a tremor ran through her. Stay, only for tonight. I cannot or will not. Her phone vibrated, fracturing the fragile moment. Her hand shook as she saw 3 missed calls from David. A wave of icy dread washed over her. Salvatore saw the fear in her expression. The warmth in his eyes turned to frost. Respond. What? Return his call. Inform your husband that you are safe. Say you are with a friend. His voice was glacial. And in the morning, you will explain precisely what it is at home that frightens you so deeply. You have no right to. I have every right. He rose, creating distance. Dante will escort you to a room. We will speak in the morning. He noticed her immobility and offered a cold, sharp smile. He clarified with unnerving calm that he would be observing her, that he would unearth her secrets with or without her cooperation. It was not a menace, but a declaration of fact. She shuddered, calling him mad. He made no effort to refute it. He concluded their exchange by turning away, his final one-word assessment hanging in the air between them. Drowning. Her path was set. Make the call, rest, and prepare for her world to be turned inside out. Her final flicker of resistance died, extinguished by fatigue and his brutal honesty. Her thumb pressed the screen. On the fourth ring, David's intoxicated voice came through. "Em, where are you?" "I'm with Sarah for the night." The lie felt hollow. Sarah was merely a colleague. "Her child is ill. She required assistance." "Fine." The sound of a television and ice in a glass filtered through the line. "Don't disturb me when you get back." He disconnected before she could utter another word. She stared at the blank screen, a vast emptiness yawning open inside her as the truth settled in. Her marriage was a lifeless shell. Salvatore's reflection observed her from the window, his expression inscrutable. "The guest room is down the corridor," he said softly. "It is the second door on the left. You may lock it. I assure you, you are safe here, Piccolola." Safe from him or the world? She left the question unasked. Dante guided her past a series of quiet doors to a room that could swallow her tiny apartment whole. There, secured behind a lock, on an impossibly soft bed, she finally shattered, the tears coming in a torrent. His vow, "Tomorrow, everything changes," resonated with an ominous certainty. She awoke to brilliant sunlight and the aroma of coffee. For a brief moment, her surroundings were a mystery. The linens were too fine, the silence too deep. Then the madness of the night before came rushing back. The party, the feint, Salvatore's piercing gaze and his dark assurances. She pushed herself upright, taking stock of her physical state. The queasiness remained, a persistent, low-grade misery. Draped over a chair were new, costly garments, tags intact. Her worn uniform had vanished. The adjoining bathroom was a study in marble and chrome, featuring a shower more complex than her vehicle. She stood beneath the hot spray, attempting to rinse away the disbelief and confusion. Enveloped in a towel that likely cost more than her month's rent, she saw it. A pregnancy test on the vanity. A powerful shock coursed through her. It was still packaged, placed beside a note in sharp, masculine script. "Listen, you don't owe me an explanation, but you must be honest with yourself." He was already aware. The knowledge struck her with the force of a physical blow. She sank onto the toilet's lid, the small box on the tile floor appearing like an unexploded device. For 3 months she had fled from this. How had this man dismantled her defenses in one night? Her hand shook as she tore open the packaging. Her mind flashed to a different test, taken at 2 a.m. in a desolate service station where 2 lines had materialized and fractured her world. She had told no one. Not David, her mother, or even Sarah. This plastic wand only affirmed the same dreaded truth. Pregnant. The judgment was rendered. She slid into the clothes Salvatore provided, knowing there was no other choice. They fit flawlessly. How could he possibly know her measurements? The question stirred the bile in her stomach. By the light of day, the apartment possessed an entirely new atmosphere. This was not a fortress, but a home. Books in 2 languages were piled high. A laptop lay open, and 3 coffee cups testified to a night of scheming. She found him on the terrace, speaking rapid, fluid Italian into his phone, a voice like velvet concealing a blade. Sunlight defined the black of his hair and the sharp line of his jaw. He wore dark jeans and a Henley that clung to a physique she knew was hardened muscle. His gaze met hers. He raised a finger for a moment, then ended his call with a tone that was a quiet, lethal vow. the call over, his attention locked onto her. "You are awake," he observed, a statement from a man devoid of uncertainty. Holding up the test, her voice was a thin accusation. "You knew. How?" His reply was a cold recitation of facts, her paleness, her fatigue, the scent of fear, and her avoidance of doctors. "In addition," he noted, "you touch your stomach when you believe you're alone." It wasn't a complex mystery. A burn of shame colored her cheeks. "You had no right to notice, to be worried." He stepped toward her, making her fight the instinct to retreat. "Tell me, Emily, does your husband know?" "No." "And why not?" The unspoken reality was explosive. The child wasn't his, a result of a hopeless moment in a failed marriage. A coward, that's what she was, fleeing the outcome of one mistake. "It's complicated," she managed, the excuse sounding feeble. Complicated. His laugh was a sharp, biting sound. An interesting term. He faced the railing, knuckles showing white. "Is the child his?" The question hung between them like a guillotine. "Why would you care?" Her voice was just a whisper. "We're strangers. You have no obligation to me." "Answer the question." "No." The word was torn from her. "It isn't his. He's unaware, and I need to go before—" "Before what?" He turned to face her, the fire in his eyes stealing her breath. "Before you work yourself into an early grave? Before you pass out again? Before you must choose between having food and a place to live?" "That is my life," she cried, her control finally shattering. "That is my world. You can't just enter it with your wealth and influence and fix it from pity." "Pity?" His laugh held a dangerous quality. "You believe I pity you? Then what is this?" She gestured around her, at the lavish apartment, at him. "Oh, why am I in this place? What is it you want from me?" He crossed the space in 2 long strides, cornering her against the railing without a single touch. His sheer presence was a tangible thing, radiating warmth and the faint aroma of sandalwood. "I want," he began, his voice sinking low, "to know what put that terror in your gaze. I want to know who made you believe you are worthless. And I want to comprehend the sickness of a man who would allow his own wife to fade away while he—" He paused, his jaw clenched. "But above all, Piccola, I want to know why you shield him." "I'm not." "You deceived him, then let him dismiss you like you were nothing." He lifted his hand, his fingers brushing gently through her damp hair. "Tell me I am wrong." She could not. The truth was written on her face. "He doesn't hit me," she whispered. "It's not that kind of marriage." "Damage has many forms, Emily. Fists are merely the most obvious." His thumb softly grazed her cheek. "Is he aware that you are drowning?" "He has his own issues." "That isn't a reply. What do you need me to confess?" Her vision blurred with tears. That their union is a total fraud, that she made a terrible error and is carrying another man's child, that she is so weary she can barely stand, that she holds 2 jobs and is still hungry, that her only companion is fear. "Yes." He rested his forehead against hers. "Say all of it. Stop acting like you can handle this." "I don't have the luxury of breaking down," she sobbed. "I must continue. I must resolve this. I am supposed to—" "You are not supposed to face any of it by yourself anymore. You are a stranger to me." "Then allow me—" His hands cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away tears she hadn't known were falling. "Allow me to help." "Why?" The question was barely a breath. His eyes drilled into hers, and she glimpsed a stark vulnerability beneath his control. Because someone should have helped me once, but they didn't. Because I understand the feeling of being caged, and because when I see you, Piccola, I see a person worth saving. She should have recoiled, recognized the 5-alarm danger of this entire scene. She should have rebuffed this stranger, aware he would only bring more turmoil. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, holding on to a fragile, wild hope that she was no longer alone. Then the sharp ring of her phone shattered the moment. David's name flashed on the display. Salvatore's expression turned to ice. Do not answer it. I must. And if you refuse, will he become concerned? Will he come searching for you? His voice was laced with scorn. Or will he simply open another beer and forget you're gone? The question struck her hard because it was the truth. She took the call. Sarah said you never showed up. A chill went through her. What? I spoke to her. I had to ask when you would be back. The unspoken accusation, you're a liar, screamed in the silence. She has no memory of that conversation, so I will ask one more time. Where are you, Emily? Salvatore stood perfectly still, a statue of pure menace. I'm visiting a different friend. I didn't want to trouble Sarah. Quit lying to me. Are you with another man? David's voice began to climb. Is that the situation here? No, David, I only needed... Be home now. We have to talk. The call ended. She stared at her phone, a cold fear coiling in her gut. Salvatore took the phone from her trembling fingers. He told her plainly she was not going back. She protested, insisting she must. His denial was absolute. He made a call to someone named Dante, instructing him to retrieve her belongings. Her residence here was now permanent, a decree that threw her into a panic. You can't hold me here. I have a life, responsibilities. He regarded her with a cool gaze. You have a husband who verifies your stories and summons you like a possession. His expression was like iron. The boundary isn't between living and not. It's between having a life and being imprisoned. He dared her to justify returning to a man who was indifferent to her survival. Her defense was a raw admission born of 3 facts. She was pregnant, penniless, and terrified, because I don't have any other choice. She was reciting the victim's creed, mistaking a familiar cage for genuine safety. His voice, now dangerously quiet, started to dismantle that fantasy. Did she truly believe he would forgive her or reform? Or was she simply waiting for him to finally break her? Her flinch was a retreat from the harsh reality, a child's plea for him to stop. Just stop! He drew her hands away, his touch gentle but firm. Listen closely. Your husband phoned your friend to confirm your alibi. That indicates suspicion. And when a man like that grows suspicious, he doesn't inquire. He seeks proof. How much time until he uncovers it? Uncovers what? The pregnancy test you purchased 3 months ago. The prenatal supplements concealed in your drawer. The clinic invoices. His stare pierced through her defenses. I had you investigated last night, Emily. My team found everything you have been concealing in 4 hours. Her entire world shifted. You had no right. I had every right to safeguard my interests. I am not one of your interests. Not at this moment. The utter conviction in those final words made her head spin. But you will be, he declared, clearing his throat, as I am presenting you with a proposal, Piccola, and you are going to agree to it. What proposal? Releasing her, he rose to his full stature. In the morning light, he looked as if he were sculpted from stone, beautiful, unyielding, and in total command. He cleared his throat, then stated his conditions. You will divorce your husband. You will permit me to provide for you and for the child. As his part of the bargain, he offered a razor-thin smile. You will always provide me the truth. No more deceit, no more secrets. You will allow me to manage your security. That's insane! Possibly. He shrugged, but it is also the only path that doesn't conclude with your absolute destruction. So what is your choice, Emily? The cell you know or the key to escape it? She could already hear David's interrogation. Picture his cynical, probing gaze searching for weakness. Then her thoughts turned to the baby, a life she could not afford but could never discard. She looked at this imposing stranger proposing an exit, a man who radiated nothing but violence and chaos. If I agree, she whispered, what is the next step? Salvatore's smile was a mix of the beautiful and the terrifying. Then I resolve your problem, little one, permanently. What do you mean, permanently? His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a new energy. Perhaps he was amused, or just stimulated that she dared to question him. I mean, your husband will sign the divorce settlement without protest. You received the funds you need, and he will never trouble you again. How? Her voice was a bare thread of sound. How can you guarantee that? Because men like David comprehend only one language: fear. He spoke with the casual air of someone discussing the weather. And I am an absolute master at making men afraid. Every instinct she possessed should have been shrieking at her to run. But a broken piece of her, the weary, desperate piece she had suppressed for years, simply wanted to yield. It wanted to hand its burdens to this handsome devil and let him solve them in his own savage fashion. That's too much to ask, she finally breathed. I'm not asking, he corrected. I'm telling you. He moved to a patio table, pouring from a carafe of coffee she hadn't seen. Sit. Eat. You're running on empty. Before her lay a spread of pastries, cornetti and others she didn't recognize, the aroma divine. Her own hunger betrayed her with a low growl. You're just using food to sidetrack me, she accused. Is it effective? For a second, a genuine smile transformed him, erasing years and revealing a boyish charm. Just as quickly, the facade returned. Sit down, Emily. She obeyed, her limbs weak and her mind reeling in the chaos of the impossible. She reached for a cornetto, pulling a small piece away. The pastry melted on her tongue, a fleeting taste of a world she would never know. Good? He inquired. Unbelievable. She cherished each morsel, rediscovering a forgotten pleasure. Where are these from? A private chef delivers them daily. His gaze was fixed on her, the same predatory intensity from before, as if her basic need nourished some dark hunger within him. A Neapolitan craftsman, he added, shapes them by hand. Of course he did. The absurdity nearly pushed her into hysterical laughter. A personal baker was his normal. You seem surprised, troubled even. I'm just losing my mind. She set the pastry aside. One day a server, the next on a penthouse terrace with a man offering to... The thought evaporated. Offer to do what, little one? He closed the distance. Speak. To demolish my world, to strip me of every choice, to handle me like a child who can't think for herself. Is that your perception of my actions? Isn't it true? A heavy quiet descended, his piercing gray eyes dissecting her soul. Allow me to share a story, he began at last. At 16, my father cut a bargain with truly dangerous men. When the debt came due, they collected a different price. A nerve jumped in his jaw. They took my mother. They brutalized her into stillness and left her body in our kitchen as a warning. The air left Emily's lungs. Salvatore, I pleaded with everyone for aid, relatives, companions, the authorities. Not one soul intervened. Fear had them all in its grip. His knuckles whitened against the table. So I resolved it. I located the men responsible. I delivered retribution. And I ensured their enablers also paid. Your age? 16. His gaze burned into hers. Old enough to understand that deliverance sometimes requires brutality, that to shield what you cherish, you must become a monster. In that instant, everything made sense. The ink, the guards, the palpable terror he inspired. What are you, Salvatore? I am a man who honors his word. His hand enclosed hers on the tabletop. I don't require your affection, Emily. I'm not even requesting your faith. I am only asking for permission to repair your shattered existence, to make you whole again. And your benefit in all this? His thumb moved in slow circles over her pulse point. The contentment of knowing you are secure, nourished, and sheltered. His gaze lowered to her abdomen. Of knowing your child is protected. You would never raise another man's child. Why not? His tone was soft, yet lethal. Soft. I am a far superior choice to a father unaware of its existence. The brutal logic of his words struck her forcefully. He was right. David would unravel. The deception would be catastrophic. Their life would become a constant state of dread, raising a child amidst secrets and resentment. I need some time, she managed. To consider, to absorb it all. No. The refusal was final. Time is a privilege you cannot afford. David is already wary. How much longer before he requires confirmation? Before he invades your phone, your possessions, you? His grasp intensified. How long before he harms you, Emily? He wouldn't, are you certain? Salvatore's look was glacial. Certain enough to gamble your life on? Your child's life? She wrenched her hand free, rising on unsteady legs. I need to breathe. You are on a balcony 20 floors high. It is nothing but air. Then I need distance. Her speech was hurried and uneven. I can't process anything with you staring at me as if what? As if you already own me. A profound quiet settled between them. Salvatore rose deliberately, circling the table to invade her personal bubble, yet he kept from touching her. I do not possess you, little one, but my protection is yours, with or without your consent. That isn't your decision. Then decide. He produced his phone, cued a video, and presented it. First, observe this. The display revealed a monochrome security recording dated only 3 hours prior. There was David, exiting their building and entering an unfamiliar vehicle. The feed tracked him to a suburban home with manicured lawns, the very ideal they had often imagined but could not attain. He rapped on the door. The door opened to a striking blonde woman in a robe. David drew her into an embrace that sickened Emily, and then he disappeared inside with her. It has been 8 months, Salvatore stated quietly. Her name is Jessica, a pharmaceutical representative. They connected professionally. Emily's lungs seized. Her mind went blank. 8 months. While she was exhausting herself, submerged in debt and deceit, he had discovered his own sanctuary. But that's not all. Salvatore's tone was now soft, nearly compassionate. The gambling debts you're aware of, they are far more severe than you imagine. He owes more than $200,000 to incredibly ruthless individuals. The device fell from her numb fingers. Salvatore intercepted it effortlessly. A small query passed her lips. How long had he been aware? Since yesterday evening, he replied, his voice becoming frigid. He had conducted a complete background check on her, needing to understand the terrain he intended to conquer. "You watched me," she breathed. "No," he countered. He had scrutinized every person she knew. And there, Luca Salvatore began his systematic dismantling of her psyche, revealing intimate facts about her existence, her spouse, her employment, her finances. He framed this profound violation, this comprehensive audit of her very soul, as an act of safeguarding. Her objections withered as he exposed her impossible position, a financial snare engineered by her husband to leave her utterly helpless. He continued his assault, weaponizing past humiliations to deepen her vulnerability. The final blow came when he disclosed his knowledge of her 3-month pregnancy, shattering her last mental barricades. Her fractured appeal to stop was the final defense of a boundary he was about to obliterate entirely. Then Salvatore uncovered her desperate escape plan. The $500 she had hidden away, the bus ticket representing her final hope. At that moment, her world fractured. As she began to fall, he was there to support her. In a single motion, the antagonist transformed into the savior, forging the first link of a trauma bond as her defiance evaporated. Her question, a faint "how?" marked the capitulation of her reason. Salvatore's reply was a masterwork of toxic manipulation engineered for total dependency. "Because I truly see you as someone deserving of rescue." That statement from the architect of her fear provoked a complete emotional collapse, cementing the perverse new bond between them. Her entire frame trembled, releasing a torrent of accumulated terror and fatigue. Throughout it, Salvatore remained a silent, unmoving anchor, offering no false solace. His glacial composure became her only point of stability in the storm, a crucial element in forging the devotion of a prisoner. When her tears subsided, he led her to a couch, normalizing his presence in her space. It was then she unburdened herself of her tragic story, the child, the poverty, her husband's destructive path. To confess it all was to concede that he was her sole escape. Salvatore feigned empathy, then immediately presented himself as the exclusive remedy. "But you no longer face this by yourself." Her perspective shifted entirely. She studied him, searching for his motive, a classic indicator of a forming trauma bond. She was trying to discern the human within the hunter. Responding to her unspoken query, he wove an elaborate fiction of his own troubled history. He invented a false broken souls understand each other tale, reframing his obsessive pursuit as a valiant rescue mission. It was the perfect execution of a narcissist with a messiah complex. To cement their warped connection, Salvatore detailed a fabricated past filled with his own trauma. He affirmed her fear as a necessary survival tool, then pivoted to dictating the rigid terms of their shared future. He made it plain this was permanent and required her absolute submission. He presented the stark conditions of their arrangement. He would furnish all she needed and shield her from every threat, and in return, her life was his. He cloaked possession in the language of protection, but she perceived the truth, naming it for what it was: ownership. His lack of denial was her answer. She was completely fractured. Her mind shrieked for her to flee, but her will was broken. She rationalized her decision for the sake of her unborn child, transforming her submission into a selfless act. It was no longer a decision, it was the only route remaining. Her soft okay ignited a triumphant gleam in Salvatore's eyes. That one word finalized their unholy pact. He closed the space between them, and the press of his lips to her forehead was not tender. It was a mark of possession. He then proclaimed her as his own, a stark notice to any who might defy him. The subsequent 72 hours would reveal the terrifying precision with which Luca Salvatore secured his new possession. Her extraction from a former life was a maneuver of military exactness. The first day began with his operative Dante sent to collect her things while her husband David was gone. Every one of her belongings was transferred to a stark, high-security flat on the opposite side of the city. In this new reality governed by Salvatore, she was penniless and utterly cut off from her history. Her panic was the aftershock of a life violently uprooted. Salvatore remarked offhandedly that the lease was settled for a full year, a tactical move that silenced any potential argument. He then revealed his associate had already confronted David, terminating the marriage with a sharp warning to stay away, thus seizing control of her entire story. The way Salvatore termed his clarification with her husband was soaked in menace, a dark implication her mind deliberately ignored for the sake of survival. On the second day, a lawyer arrived. A woman of such influence it was evident he was using his full power. The attorney, Victoria Chen, presented divorce papers with mercilessly harsh terms. When she balked, the lawyer produced evidence of the husband's infidelity, along with further leverage from Salvatore, hinting at threats far beyond the scope of the law. On the third day, a physician visited the apartment. This private doctor, Rossi, performed an examination that only deepened her sense of being trapped. A portable ultrasound confirmed she was 13 weeks pregnant, a process Salvatore observed like a man inspecting his asset. While the child was healthy, the patient was found to be malnourished. The doctor addressed her with Salvatore's pet name, Piccolola, a public declaration of his claim on both her and their unborn baby, confirming even the physician belonged to his sphere. During the whole examination, Salvatore simply observed with the cold disinterest of a proprietor. When the doctor made a remark, he corrected her, insisting his actions were not spoiling, but providing. The distinction was critical. It defined his dominion as ownership, not affection. The fourth day, the divorce was finalized in her absence, a step Salvatore took to shield her from emotional turmoil. His lawyer confirmed David had signed the documents at 3 p.m, formally severing the last legal connection to her past life. Her former husband had offered no resistance. He had relayed an apology through the lawyer, even disclosing that his mistress was 4 months pregnant. This minor fact, presented with cold accuracy, was designed to be the final, clean severing. The patient's response was a void, a complete emotional numbness born of intense psychological pressure. The betrayal seemed remote, as if it had happened to a stranger. Confined in her gilded new prison, she felt nothing, a textbook symptom of profound shock. Salvatore's timing was so impeccable it felt sinister, implying he was perpetually watching, knowing the exact instant she would fracture. This only fortified his godlike authority and her absolute reliance. He immediately dismissed her reflexive "I'm fine," denying her any retreat. He had seen the truth of her numbness. It was not sorrow for the man she'd lost, but the guilt of failing to perform the expected grief. By articulating her own heart for her, he cast himself as the sole witness to her soul, transforming from a monster into an unlikely keeper of secrets. When she dared to ask how, his reply was simply attention, a gilded word for what was truly an obsessive vigil. He then mapped the geography of her soul with horrifying clarity. Her dread of freedom, of solitude, of a simple touch. He named every single shattered piece of her. He concluded his analysis by naming her ultimate fear, that he would simply be the next man to inflict pain. The confession that came after was an expert act of manipulation. He redefined his dark obsession as a mythic, unstoppable power, recasting their trauma bond as fate. He professed to see his own suffering in her gaze, a shared agony he termed drowning in plain sight. He insisted her brokenness was the very catalyst for his actions. Then he reached for her, framing her face in a gesture meant to obliterate her defenses and forge intimacy in a day. He could read the conflict in her eyes. The pace was too swift, his dominance too absolute. By voicing her own fears and admitting he might be insane or controlling, he dismantled her barriers piece by piece. He spoke only of permanence, a total commitment that proved this was no mere whim. Her feeble protest, "You barely know me," was utterly disregarded. Luca perceived not fragility, but a survivor, tempered by a destructive marriage. He reframed her fear for the child as bravery, her hesitance as kindness. Pressing his forehead to hers was an overpowering maneuver designed to eclipse all logical thought. He vowed this twisted, exquisite process of learning her would be eternal. Words deserted her, lost in the tempest of her mind. So he spoke for her, a perilous little smile on his lips as he voiced her unspoken question. "Like I'm falling for you?" Her answer, a strangled yes, unleashed a torrent of self-criticism. He cut through her spiral with a single potent declaration. "You have me." He silenced her self-loathing with a kiss, a deliberate act to overwhelm her senses and end all argument. It began softly, a question of her surrender. The moment she yielded, it deepened into a statement of possession that sent a tremor through her being. Afterward, all she could recall was the coffee, his vows, and the sweet venom she had willingly consumed. All reason dissolved, leaving only the tangible sensation of his lips and the solid warmth of his frame, which her mind desperately coded as safe. It was a total transfer of trust from her instinct to him. His question cut through the stillness. "Still think this is a bad idea?" A flawless move that trapped her sanity in checkmate. The following weeks unfolded as a meticulously arranged performance of domestic harmony. Luca was a constant, gentle figure. He established firm routines for her meals and health, constructing a flawless prison of complete reliance. At her appointments, he took command, his inquiries asserting his calm, total dominion over her and their child. Groceries materialized each week, containing items she had only faintly desired, demonstrating his ability to foresee her every need. Yet this obsessive attentiveness was paired with a fierce, isolating possessiveness. He forbade her from working and physically intercepted a friend who tried to speak with her, a quiet decree that his world was now a closed system. Then Emily's estranged mother called unexpectedly. Luca's reaction was to launch a full-scale background check, justifying it as a necessary precaution. Emily protested that he couldn't investigate everyone she knew, but Luca's stance was clear. It was not a point of negotiation, it was his new directive. This wasn't irrational, he explained, but a matter of protection. Closing the space between them on the couch, a clear display of dominance, he stated his one condition, absolute loyalty, linking it to her safety. When she asked from whom, he delivered the blow. Her mother's new partner was involved with the Brata. The name lingered in the air like a threat. He presented the facts. 3 calls in 1 week after 2 years of complete silence. This was not a family reunion. It was a calculated approach. He informed her it was not about reconciliation, but pure reconnaissance. The shock on Emily's face confirmed her ignorance. Her own mother, he asserted, was exploiting her. He placed his hands on her shoulders, a gesture that was part comfort, part restraint. He named himself her guardian against the world's predators, a roster that now included her mother and ex-husband. She tried to insist she wasn't helpless, but he twisted her words, declaring she wasn't his vulnerability, she was his everything. And in that instant, the truth hit her with crushing weight. She was the single greatest liability in his violent existence. A cold sickness washed over her as she envisioned the target now fixed upon her. Fear finally found its voice as she grasped that every bond here was a contract written in blood. Luca read her terror and became an unstoppable force, promising to neutralize every threat. He was no longer a lover, but a singular army whose sole mission was her protection. Then, at the 20-week scan, the ultrasound revealed a daughter. The doctor confirmed her health, but this fact was lost in the storm that was about to break. That blurry image on the monitor was a glimpse of her future. A daughter. A tidal wave of absolute terror crashed over her, and a confession was torn from her lips. She was terrified of failing as a mother because she had never been shown how. Her defenses completely disintegrated. He instantly rejected her self-doubt, calling her an incredible mother already. He reframed her desperate battle for survival as a mother bear shielding her cub. The physician Rossi inadvertently supported him, defining motherhood as a fight to endure, which only validated Luca's claim and Emily's deepest fears. She whispered, "What if I am not enough?" And he pledged to become whatever she felt she lacked. Inside her own mind, their connection was a contorted knot of ownership and safety she could not possibly unravel. A perfect clinical example of a trauma bond. With a single decisive word, Luca dispelled her confusion, renaming their tangled situation as family. That evening, he orchestrated a grand private dinner, a display of his wealth and influence, presented as a tribute to her recovery and a vow of her security. She finally summoned the courage to speak it, that his look was predatory, like a man assessing a prize rather than a person. He made no attempt to refute it. "I am a possessive man," he said, his tone serene and lethal. "I do not surrender what is mine." Her retort, "I don't belong to you," was merely the opening move in a contest she was destined to lose. And so he began, dismantling her reality piece by piece. His roof, his wealth, the very bedrock of her sanity. He wove a cage around her with their unborn child as the lock on the door. The final fatal blow came when he confessed to hearing his name in her sleep, proof her very subconscious belonged to him. Her objection was a dying breath against a gale force wind. He closed the distance, his supposed clairvoyance the only evidence he needed. "We are one," he breathed, moments before his lips took hers in a kiss that was not an act of affection, but the searing mark of a brand. And she shattered because some broken part of her soul whispered that he was right. The last embers of her former self went cold. She was no longer a person needing rescue, but a prize to be claimed. As the kiss broke, he pressed his advantage, producing a velvet box that drank the very light from the air. It was a proposal, a masterfully timed assault designed to obliterate what was left of her will. He spoke into her echoing silence, waving away the absurdity of the moment. Inside the box, a ring lay waiting, a silent, glittering argument he was destined to win. Her choked accusation, "You're mad," was met with a placid smile. "Perhaps," he conceded, before painting a vivid portrait of their shared future. He spoke of raising their daughter, of a life spun from joy, not merely survival, striking at the core of her deepest vulnerabilities. The logic in her mind screamed in protest. It was too much, too soon. This man was a phantom. But his words became a siren's call she could no longer resist. In the quiet devastation that followed, her heart staged a coup against her mind. She began to re-examine his every action, recasting his darkness as a shield, his possessiveness as a form of grace. He was not her captor, but the visionary of her new existence. Through this lens, she accepted. His conquering smile was the signature on her surrender. The ring felt like fate as it slid onto her finger, sealing her new life. They were wed 3 months on, in an intimate affair. The attendees were a curated few from her newly constricted world, a quiet testament to the beautiful fortress he had constructed. She met his gaze, a blend of worship, command, and brutal loyalty, and accepted it all as one. Their daughter was born with the December snows. Through 8 hours of torment, Luca remained her steadfast anchor, his voice a calm shore in a raging sea. The instant she held their child, her world fractured and reformed around a single, staggering truth. A piece of your own heart could beat outside your chest. She's perfect, she gasped. As is her mother. Luca's voice was an immediate echo, his lips gracing both their brows before he asked her name. Gazing into that infant face, she saw only him, his features etched into their child, binding her to his dynasty for all time. Sophia, she named her, the sound itself feeling like destiny. For wisdom. Sophia Salvatore. Luca let the name settle, a slow, satisfied smile blooming. Perfect. Later, as she watched him cradle their daughter with that fierce, almost violent tenderness, she knew how wrong she had been. Love did not have to be gentle to be true. A sanctuary, she reasoned, did not need to be a sunlit field to offer safety. Sometimes deliverance wears the cloak of shadows and menace, carried by a man whose affection burns with the intensity of a threat. But it was deliverance. It was love. It was a primal need she never knew she possessed. "What are you thinking?" Luca's voice was a low whisper, careful not to stir Sophia. "I am happy." The realization was a terrifying, unshakable fact. "I love you. This is my life." "Then you should get used to it, Piccolola." His gaze found hers over their daughter's sleeping form. "Because I am never letting you go. Not in this world, or any that come after." It was a covenant, a decree, and she believed him. Luca Salvatore was a predator, but his word was law. He swore he would be her savior, and he became it. He swore to be her armor, and no harm ever found her again. He swore eternity, and she felt that forever settling deep within her bones. The life she believed was over had merely been reforged in his fire, emerging as something more magnificent than she could ever have imagined.